Hello and welcome to the Center for Healthy Sex monthly webinar. I'm Dr. Alex Katehakis, and I want to remind you that today I'm going to be talking about intuition. Also, I want to encourage you to ask any questions that you might have. Feel free to type them into the text box next to you, or you can email us, Charlie, at centerforhealthysex.com if you prefer to retain your anonymity, but keep in mind also that this is a public forum. So during the first part of this webinar, I want you to think about the question, do you trust your own intuition? Intuition is our topic today, and that is often a powerful, I would say power that human beings have that we tend to ignore and not use. So think about that question as we go forward and talk about the topic of intuition. The quote from today is by Dean Koontz, who's a very famous fictional author, and he says, "Intuition is seeing with the soul." So what does that mean when we think about that? When we see with our soul, the soul is such a nebulous concept. There are scientists that say that when we die, we can actually see the soul leaving the body, I think with infrared cameras and things of that nature. And the soul is this part of ourselves that we all recognize as being the life force that drives us. And if intuition is the way that our soul sees the world, then what an extraordinary gift that we have as human beings. And today's conversation will challenge all of us to think more about why we don't use that gift more frequently. So when you just know something, that's when we know we're dealing with intuition. So think about the times that you've known something without actually intellectually knowing it through conscious thought or reason. Sometimes this is talked about as a gut feeling or a felt sense. It's a different kind of knowing. It's not data or information or something that you've memorized. It's really just this feeling that you have. And at those times you experienced what we call an implicit way of knowing. So it's not explicit, it's not declared. It's an internal, implicit way of knowing. It's one that's felt and understood through signals in the body usually. So our emotions originate in the body, and we're having impulses in the body all the time. So this is not an explicit knowing that's dependent on the five senses. It's a feeling that sort of bubbles up or emerges from the body into conscious awareness. And because of the nature of it, we tend to shoo it away. We tend to not give it much credence or weight because it's not sort of hard or an explicit piece of information that we learn somewhere. So implicit intuition or intuition is another way of thinking about it, or implicit knowing or intuition has been called a sixth sense, separate from sight, smell, touch, taste, or hearing. And it also gets thought about as extrasensory perception, or this other sense, this mysterious thing. But the truth is, it's not that mysterious. That this is a biological directive. It's part of our brains and our nervous systems. We are all sort of gifted with the powers of intuition, but we tend to, as I said before, sort of minimize it or not take it as seriously as we really should. So knowing, intuition is being open to and trusting the mind and the body. So being open to that felt sense, being open to that sixth sense, knowing something instinctually rather than consciously is more than knowing facts. We can call this insight also. And I think we've all had these experiences. When you trust what you know implicitly, you're really relying on your emotionally your emotionality, this emotional and physically unified sense of self, a holistic part of oneself, meaning your body and your mind are resonant together. So I know that everybody listening today has had the experience of, let's say you're leaving your house and you have a thought that you should feed the cat, and then you kind of brush it off because you think, oh, I already fed the cat, or that you should take a jacket because it might be cool, but it's really, it's summer, so it's not that cold outside. And sure enough, you leave, and then you realize, oh my gosh, you didn't feed the cat, and you should have listened to your intuition. Or you get someplace and it's really cold, you're in air conditioning even though it's summer, and you're thinking, oh, I wish I'd brought a sweater or a jacket. So that still small voice that's there all the time that we tend to ignore, as opposed to when we hear that voice, stop ourselves and say, I'm going to listen to that. And my experience is that that takes practice, that we really have to practice listening to that voice. First of all, you have to hear it and not brush it away and act like it's not important. And then you have to really start to act on it and make it a discipline, if you will, of saying, every time I hear that voice, I'm going to stop and I'm going to do what it says. So whether it says feed the cat, or lock the back door, or check the back door, let's say, or take a sweater, that you're going to get into the habit of doing that. So being open to this voice, trusting in it, the awareness that your body-mind is creating new connections of understanding all the time, and that these are valid. They're valid as our other senses are. So, does anybody have any questions or thoughts as I've been talking about this topic of intuition thus far? If so, remember that you can write a comment in the text box here, and also to remember that our intake counselors are available to take any questions that you have about sex and love addiction or issues of sex and sexuality. And our number is 310-843-9902, and I just put it in the text box there so you can see it. So there's intuition and there's objective data, as I've been saying. And when it's time to make big decisions, especially if we decide whether we're with the right person or whether we should buy a car, we usually look at the objective data. We make a list of pros and cons. We look at what something costs if we're buying a large item like an automobile. We have a tendency to look at that which is concrete and just how things kind of measure out on paper. But what we fail to do is really get quiet and ask ourselves, what's really true for me? What do I want here? So take a chance and jettison your list. Sit quietly instead, whether it's just for a few minutes or, you leave yourself a couple of days so you don't have to make a decision impulsively. And set your intention for an answer to your dilemma. Then stop reasoning about it. Stop thinking about it. Stop trying to figure it out. Just sit quietly and pay attention to any sort of signs or symbols or intuitive thoughts that come your way. And see what happens. Somebody writes, being able to sense our intuition requires clarity of thought. And I would say, yes, it actually requires a disinterest in the thought, Oscar. I would say that's maybe more accurate, that the thoughts are all these concrete reasonings that are manufactured by the left brain, which is always looking to fill in the blanks. It's always looking to create answers for things that we don't really have answers to. And it will sort of steer us away from this other voice that I'm talking about. Oliver also writes, this weekend I was struggling with some new issues and I was unable to find or sense my intuition. And I think when obsession is rolling around in the left brain, when we're preoccupied with thoughts, it makes it difficult for us to hear our intuition because we're not quiet. And that's why what I'm suggesting is sitting in meditation, saying, I'm going to go take a walk on the beach, and I'm not going to walk my thoughts, if you will. That whenever I hear thoughts, I'm just going to be disinterested in them and look at the sunshine or look at the ocean, or smell the fresh air, or notice the feeling of my feet on the sand. Obviously, if you live in a colder climate, you're going to be noticing the frost or the snow on the ground, and the feeling of chill in the air. So this is a mindfulness practice, really, where you're bringing your attention back to what's going on in the body and the impact of the environment on the body. And you're not judging it, you're just noticing it with what we call bare attention. And in that quietness, maybe not in that moment, maybe not when you're on the beach or taking a walk through the snow, but later that evening when you're maybe a little bit sleepy, that's when your intuition will come to you. That's when your still small voice, those thoughts that are more powerful, will inform you of what's really true for you. So the idea is that you have to quiet the mind. You won't make the thoughts go away, but you don't chase them. You don't get interested in them. You don't try to figure things out by way of those thoughts. You gently just kind of listen quietly to your intuition. And so please remember that you can answer questions here in this thread by typing into the text box, or you can send Charlie a note at charlie@centerforhealthysex.com, and then he will send the notes to me via text box. So where does intuition come from? We want to ascribe magical thinking to it, and it's not really magical thinking, or it's not channeling necessarily. It's really coming from inside our own brains and bodies. Emma writes, sometimes I get overwhelmed or confused because it's hard to distinguish between my intuition and my desires, fantasies, and fears. So I like how you recommend meditation. Thank you. Yeah, I think, as I said, the left brain is very, very good at confabulating things, at filling in the blanks, at sort of leading us down another path, because the nature of it is to have this laser-like focus and to reduce everything to what it knows. And fantasy, on the other hand, can be dissociative. It can be a way of getting out of reality. But in fantasy is another story. So with OCD, obsessive compulsive disorder, or obsessive compulsive thoughts, we're kind of ruminating and running the thoughts over again. So, if I do this, then that will happen, and if I don't do that, that will happen, and what will that person say, and how am I going to think about that? So that's kind of the left brain, like a hamster running on a wheel. Fantasy is more of like a helium balloon, where you're off in another world, a world that's not really going to happen, but you're still the author of that world. You're still constructing the thoughts and the players, and you're still making up what the person's going to say and how you're going to respond. So it has a different quality to it. But intuition is quiet. There's quiet in the background because intuition emerges from the body up. It sort of pops into awareness. And so it comes from different places. So do pay attention to your dreams and thoughts that drift in and out of conscious awareness when you're taking a walk, or when you're working out, or after lovemaking. I find that sometimes, for me, some of my best intuitive thoughts come when I'm on a treadmill, because my breathing is labored, my heart rate is up. I can't really think about too much else, but I go into what we call a flow state, which is a reverie, where all of a sudden my intuition comes alive, because it's a highly creative process. I start to have ideas and thoughts and feelings that I'm sure are coming from the endorphins that are being released from the workout also. And those are almost always true for me. They're inspiring. They have an excitatory feeling to them. And usually after I work out, I make sure that I write everything down that comes to me. Likewise, when we're waking up in the morning and we're coming out of a dream, there can be a quality of awareness where thoughts are coming very rapidly, and those can also be incredibly creative times and creative ideas. So don't discount those times. And as I said, intuition bursts from the deepest part of the body-mind, so they can't be forced. they come to us in sort of pops, is what they feel like. They're emergent processes that pop into awareness. So they're not coming to us because we're forcing the thinking. They're coming to us from this flow state. So any other thoughts about where intuition comes from, or feelings about what I'm saying? I mean, ideally, what you want to do is expect the unexpected. You want to take a wait-and-see attitude for any outcome. So I think what's useful about what I'm proposing is that when you have to make a big decision, you don't wait till the last minute. You don't rush to it or lunge at it. You start to prepare a fertile ground for the answers to come to you by meditating on it, by sleeping on it, by getting quiet and just setting your intention for saying, I'm going to go for a walk, and I want to set the intention to ask myself, what kind of car do I really want? Not what I think I should have, or what is out of my reach but I feel entitled to, or what's less than what I feel like I really deserve because I get scared that I don't have the money. But if I could really have my heart's desire that I know is within reason, what do I really want? And then just take a walk, meditate, dream, see what comes to you. But don't wait until, your car breaks down and you have to buy a car tomorrow and then you're forced into a decision. That's probably not going to have a great outcome for you. So many true statements being shared during this webinar, and how to sense intuition. Glad that's useful to you, Oliver. And Zarina says, can I trust it? What is it? Well, as I was saying earlier, it being intuition is what I call a still small voice. It's a voice that comes to us all the time that we tend to ignore. Typically, I'm most aware of it when I have a thought when I'm leaving my house and I ignore it, like check the back door, or don't forget to, maybe you should bring those pieces of paper with you or that receipt with you. And then I think, oh, I don't need it. And then I get where I'm going and I think, oh, I wish I had brought that receipt with me. So it's that voice that is uniquely different from every other voice that's in your head that you have to get accustomed to hearing first of all, and then acting on it. And Paul says it sounds like the engagement of the body in exercise to open to intuition is analogous to the responses of a person to the underlying experiences that emerge during EMDR. I don't know about the neurochemical underpinnings that underlie both of those, so I'm not sure about that. I do know during exercise we are releasing lots of endorphins. So we're in a state of well-being, we're reducing stress, and when we reduce stress, we reduce the firing of negative thoughts. And EMDR, the responses to the underlying experiences that emerge, I don't know that those are being activated by way of endorphins and exogenous opiates, but they are being informed or opened up by way of bilateral stimulation of the brain, meaning the EMDR therapist is trying to get both hemispheres to talk to each other. And maybe that's happening during a workout on an elliptical or on a treadmill, but there is some bilateral stimulation that both hemispheres of the brain are talking to each other. Maybe our eyes are naturally moving back and forth because we're looking at things, or listening to music, certainly, while we're in a cardiovascular active state. So maybe they're the same things, but I can't say they definitely are. Oliver says it was this Sunday at about 2 p.m. when I could not take the confusion any longer, and I was finally able to meditate. Great. And in order to do this, I had to channel the meditative training I experienced and was given throughout the year. So yes, at some point you just get exhausted by the constant thinking and obsessing about something, or drifting into fantasy and not knowing what's true. At some point we get tired enough and disgusted enough that we say, all right, enough. I'm just going to get quiet. I'm going to stop forcing this. I'm going to stop trying, and I'm just going to see what comes up. Just see what happens and listen to what's happening. So we have an email question saying, would you relate intuition to what we refer to as a gut feeling? And I would say yes. That gut feeling is a knowing in the body. It's an implicit knowing that's telling us that something is off. Now, it's a form of intuition because the gut feeling is usually registering danger of some sort. It's usually not a good feeling because when the word gustatory has to do with the gut, it has to do with digestion and all of the neuronal networks that are in the gut also that are registering signals to and from the body. So I've always lived by the notion of trusting my gut, but sometimes I worry that I've tipped the scales to align with thoughts and or feelings. How can I know if what I'm feeling is truly the right decision? Well, I think you have to trust that. You have to come to trust the body. Bessel van der Kolk says the body keeps the score. The body knows the truth. If you're sitting at home at night and it's dark and you're alone and there's a loud bam, there's a loud sound, the first thing that happens is that the body jumps. It reacts to the loud sound. And that reaction is registering danger. Our heart rate goes up, our palms start to sweat, there's a racing in the blood pressure, there's a little bit of fear of, oh my gosh, danger is what we're reading. And then the rational mind swoops in and says, well, maybe it was the cat, or maybe a broom fell, or, oh, I know what that is. We start to talk ourselves out of that feeling. And then we go and investigate it and usually find that it was that the ironing board fell down. So two things are happening there. There is a gut reaction, a visceral reaction that says danger, and that is evolutionary and it's protective. And that is our first truth. And so we have to trust that if we want to stay safe. Upon further investigation, we start to see that something fell down. But if it wasn't something that fell down, it could be that somebody's trying to break in your back door, in which case you should run and hide and call 911. So we have to get adept at trusting these impulses in the body. They're true. When the impulse in the body says, don't do that, or you're going to be sorry, or I've got a gut feeling that this is not going to go so well, you should trust that first, and then investigate it to see if it's aligning with what's true. Is it really the ironing board that fell, or is it somebody trying to break into my house? But there's that old adage, better safe than sorry. So we've been talking about making a space for intuition. And so you want to hold the paradox of intention setting and outcome letting, which becomes a practice that requires self-awareness. So setting an intention and then letting go of the outcome is really important. Another piece of that is that you're setting the intention and then your attention is on accomplishing that. So if your intention is to meet someone, that you want to be in a relationship and you want to meet someone, paradoxically you have to let go of the outcome and you also have to keep your attention on meeting someone, meaning you have to go on dates. You have to tell your friends that you're available. If you go on dating sites, you want to do so judiciously, and then when you start dating, you want to pay attention to all the signs and symbols you're feeling in your body, which could be, you're really excited or you like this person, but then they say or do something that has you thinking again about them, or maybe you start to have a gut feeling around them that there's something icky about them or off or not right. And the feelings of excitement about the possibility of love will often override that gut feeling, and you want to be careful about letting that happen. So somebody writes, as a partner of a sex addict, I find I still struggle with trusting my intuition versus fear-based memory, which makes a lot of sense. I.e., am I imagining it? I meditate, do yoga, exercise, etc. Any other thoughts that might help me find balance? Well, I think that's a very challenging situation, because when you've been in a relationship with somebody who has been cheating and betraying you, it does wear down your intuition. Your intuition starts to you start to feel like you're imagining things or you're making things up. And part of a spouse's own recovery from betrayal or sex addiction is to start to reinstate their intuition, to start to trust their intuition, so that they know that they're making the right decision. So when you have a fear-based memory, I think it's important for you to go to your partner and say, I really want to trust you right now, but I just got activated and I got scared. And it's your partner's job and responsibility to help you feel okay again, to give you evidence if you need of what their behavior has been, that they have been doing the right things and that you've seen them doing the right things, so that your intuition is being buttressed by their behaviors. If you feel like something is off and that person is lying and they're not doing what they're supposed to be doing, then you have to trust your intuition. But you're still going to get triggered and you're still going to have bad days, and you need to go to your partner, who's going to help you by way of their empathy and helping to soothe you according to what you need. Paul says, intention setting and outcome letting. That's an eloquent expression. Thank you. And another email question is, I think that's the same question about, struggling with intuition. And so what you're saying is that you're trying to regulate your nervous system through yoga, through meditation. You want to give your partner the benefit of the doubt that he or she is going to therapy, perhaps working a 12-step program and doing all the right things, and that reassures you that they're on the right track. And when you don't feel they're on the right track, or you get a bad sense, you just want to check it out with them. So don't let your knowing mind rule with its judgments and solutions, because that's only one part of our brain, the left brain. The right brain is where our creativity is, where our intuition is, where insight lies, where the more kind of expansive way of seeing the world lies. So don't let it get shut down by the judgments and solutions of the left brain, which can be so sure that it knows the truth and it knows what's going on. And instead, just notice those thoughts as background noise. Stay in your body and see what emerges. In the Buddhist tradition, they talk about the monkey mind, watching the monkey going up and down the pole, but not really giving it too much credence, as I said earlier. Just notice it, like, oh, look at all those thoughts that are running around, and look at all those voices from the past that say I should do this or should do that, as opposed to I'm not sure what I should or shouldn't do. I know what's right, I know what's wrong, I know what how I feel in terms of my own morality and my own integrity, but I'm just going to sit quietly and see if something else comes to me, if something else more creative or more possibilities come to me. And Emma says, do you have any advice for how to become better at outcome letting? And I would say yes. It's about not grasping to an outcome, about saying, I don't know what's going to happen. I don't know if I'm going to get what I want. But, as Mick Jagger famously said, you get what you need. And this idea of grasping to a solution is really what creates suffering in our life. The minute we ascribed a feeling of, this is mine, or that I deserve this, or I should have this, or everybody else has it, or I really, really, really need to have that thing, whether it's a job or a person, we're setting ourselves up for disappointment and for pain, as opposed to I want this thing, I like it, I think it's right for me, but if it doesn't happen, it's not the end of the world. I'm not starving, there aren't bombs going off over my head, nobody's releasing, at least if you don't live in Syria, sarin gas into the air. How bad is it really? How horrible is it really that I don't have this thing? I didn't get a cancer diagnosis today, so let's put it into perspective. If it can be fixed by money or by another solution, then it's not really a problem. And I think that's where we get into trouble, is that we get so attached to these outcomes, and we get these messages from our culture that we deserve to have it all, or that we're entitled to, or it's my right somehow, as opposed to, you know what, we're all just kind of average human beings and we're doing the best we can, and things come our way, and sometimes we get them and sometimes we don't. And I don't know that there's some big cosmic experience for why that's true. It's best just to be in gratitude for what you do have, and to recognize, in Sex and Love Addicts Anonymous, they have a saying that rejection is God's protection. And so whether you believe in God or not, you can, change that word out for the word the universe, that maybe you dodged a bullet. Is another saying, that you wanted that thing so badly, but who knows why you passed on it or why you didn't get it. Maybe it would have turned out to be a nightmare. So sometimes when we force something, we really are swimming upstream. It's often not the best thing to do, because we're going to be met with a lot of resistance and a lot of suffering when we force something. So we have to know that going into it if we're really going to fight something and really go after it. So I think that intuition, we could say, is the body-mind's connection to the divine, to something bigger, because people talk about this intuitive voice as our higher power speaking to us, our higher self speaking to us. And maybe it is that, maybe it's a neurobiological construct, but either way, it is absolutely a human power that we have, that other creatures on earth don't necessarily have, that we deserve to listen to and use and put into play, so that we can start to trust all of our human potential, not just this reductive thinking part of our brain. So we could say that intuition is the process of letting the truth come into view. When we really let the truth come into view, then we can start to see more clearly. And it can be elusive, as Zarina was saying, well, how do I find it? How do I know? It has an elusive quality to it. It's like a shy child that will run away if you try to capture it or grasp it. It comes up when we least expect it. It can come in the form of, I woke up Sunday morning. I was visiting my 90-year-old mother, and I woke up thinking I wanted French toast for breakfast. Now, I don't eat French toast because I try to stay away from carbs like most people, and it just seems kind of decadent. But I realized I was waking up thinking about that because she used to make it when I was a child all the time. And when she woke up and we were about to have breakfast, I said, "Mom, what do you think about having French toast?" And she said, "Oh my God, I haven't thought about that in years, but I remember how much I love to make it." So together we made French toast, which was a very sweet, sentimental, sort of connecting thing to do with her, which I would never have thought about when I was driving to visit my mother. Oh, I'm going to make French toast with her because that will be a bonding thing. It never even occurred to me. But she just had her 90th birthday. There are very few things that we can do together anymore. But that was a sweet moment. I could have said, oh, it's fattening, or I don't want to do that, or I don't want to make her work that hard, or I could have discounted it in so many ways. But I justified it because I figured, well, if we had scrambled eggs and toast with jelly, that's essentially French toast anyway. And that was the left brain coming in to justify why it was okay to eat French toast, which is sort of a hilarious thing. But there it is, that moment. I mean, it just came in a moment to me, and I followed it, and it was a really sweet thing that the two of us got to share. So you want to let go and let God, or let the divine or the universe take over, and trust your body-mind's connection in those moments, because they're always surprising and they're never a big deal. It's never like some gigantic thing where the heavens are parting and the angels are singing. It can be as simple as a thought like that we tend to discount and shoo away and not act on. So the next time you think about someone and you see them, you run into them, or that you hear from them, they call you or they email you, consider that your intuition might have been at play, that it wasn't just a coincidence, that you were thinking about that person because they too were thinking about you. And that is a form of telepathy, which we also tend to discount. So don't devalue this way of knowing by ascribing all, meetings of chance encounters to just chance or serendipity, that the more you start to pay attention to your intuition, the more you start to pay attention to this small voice, and you start to have the discipline of acting on it, saying yes to it, the more you start to cultivate this special power that all humans have. So notice recurring images, thoughts, or even songs that pop into your head. Sometimes they're trying to inform us of something. And respect your intuition when it tells you to take a different route, or grab a jacket, or call a friend, or make French toast. Don't discount it, listen to it, and act on it. And use your intuition to make minor decisions. That's a good way to start to play around with it. For example, Emma said, "This is so helpful, my intuition definitely led me here." Right, you might get a random note about something and say, "Oh, I don't want to do that," or "That's stupid." But it's like, that's here. I have time to check it out. I'm going to go check it out and see what happens. Because in the checking it out, let's say you get some sort of flyer or thing about, I don't know, a gallery opening or music or a photographic exhibit, and you say, "Oh, I don't know, well maybe I should go to that because I've been thinking about going, so I'm going to go." You may go and actually meet somebody if you're single and think, "Oh my gosh, I would never have met this person if I hadn't gone there." And maybe you make a new friend, or maybe you find a new lover. Who knows what could happen? Or maybe you buy a photograph you never thought you were going to buy, or a book. But something will shift when you start to follow these small moments. Oliver says, "Yesterday morning at 12 a.m. when I was sleepy, I finally realized that I want someone to be what they are unable to be, and I finally sensed I had to find out how to part ways." And that's beautiful, because at 12 a.m. you're probably tired. Your left brain is probably a little bit mushy. It's not thinking and trying to control and figure things out as much. And it made a space for you to really, in a relaxed state, think, I'm trying to turn a carrot into an apple, which is an act of violence on the apple, by the way, because the apple can't be a carrot. And so I need to let this go. I need to go find what it is I really want and stop trying to get that person to be something that they're not, because that's not fair to them. They're doing the best they can. They're trying as hard as they can, but it's not what you want or need. So that's a good example also. So finally, I want to remind you that Mirror of Intimacy is available to you through our daily meditations. If you sign up for them at centerforhealthysex.com, there's a page there where you can get our meditations, I think 4 days a week. If you want to purchase the book, it's on Amazon.com. As always, we love to hear from you by way of your reviews, whether it's one word or one sentence or a paragraph. It's up to you. But let your intuition lead you to it. And sometimes even reading these meditations on a daily basis may have you having your own intuition about the topic at hand that has nothing to do with what we wrote about it. But it informs you in the way you go forward in your day. It reminds you to use your intuition, to smile at people, to make eye contact, to sort of put love and caring into the world, and bring your sensuality into the world also, which is different than your sexuality, to comport yourself with an aliveness, with a vitality, and with a juiciness. So today, just go about your day. Don't focus on your intuition. Don't force it. And just notice when something informs you, like it's lunchtime now, so you may have a feeling like, I really want French onion soup. I haven't thought of French onion soup in 10 years, but I think I'm going to have that today. So remember to sit quietly, listen to your body, and to use your intuition. So thank you for tuning in today. I hope you have a wonderful week and a wonderful month, and I look forward to visiting with you again in April. I'm Dr. Alex Katehakis, and you can find me at centerforhealthysex.com. Thank you.